My name is Lorraine Lancaster, and I'm 24 years old. If you looked at my life on paper that Tuesday morning in September, you might have thought things were finally starting to line up for me. After 3 years of patching together retail shifts, babysitting gigs, and late night diner work, I had something I hadn't had in a long time. An actual shot. A real job interview with Vertex Digital, one of the fastest growing tech startups in Chicago. The kind of opportunity people like me are told is out of our league. In the same breath, they tell us to dream big. I woke up at 6:30, a full 2 hours earlier than I needed to. I laid my clothes out on the bed like armor, a navy blazer, crisp white blouse, gray slacks I'd bought on clearance and then paid extra to have tailored, because if I couldn't afford prestige, I could at least afford a decent fit. I steamed every wrinkle out of that blazer like each crease was a doubt I refused to carry with me. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, practicing my answers until my voice sounded confident instead of desperate. Tell us about yourself. Describe a time you overcame a challenge. Why should we hire you? I watched my own reflection, watched the way my shoulders straightened each time I repeated, I bring resilience and results, even when resources are limited. For the first time in months, something unfamiliar rose in my chest. Not dread, not numbness. Hope. I was still holding that fragile feeling when my bedroom door swung open without a knock. Brianna never knocked. My younger sister breezed in at 9:30 a.m. like she owned the air in the hallway, a venti caramel macchiato in one hand, oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head, even though we were indoors. She carried herself like an Instagram influencer with 1 million followers instead of a 21-year-old college dropout living entirely on our parents' credit cards. Hey, she announced, not even glancing at me. I need you to drive me to Oakbrook Mall by noon. It wasn't a request. It was a directive, like I was the help, not her sister. I zipped up my leather portfolio slowly, buying myself a second to keep my temper from spilling over this early. I can't, I said. My interview is at 12:30. Downtown. I have to be there early to check in. She blinked at me, like the sentence didn't quite translate. No, you can, she corrected, tone flat and bored. Take me first. I told Ashley and Kennedy I'd meet them there. You can just call your little interview people and reschedule. I stared at her, genuinely stunned. You want me to cancel a job interview I've been waiting 3 months for? I asked quietly. So you can go shopping for makeup with your friends? She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might roll right out of her head. You've applied to like 1,000 jobs, she said, dragging out the words. You'll get another interview. My friends are only free today. Then she turned and walked out of my room as if she'd just signed a contract with my soul and knew I'd obey. But something in me was different that morning. I followed her downstairs, my pulse picking up speed, hope in my chest, suddenly wrapped in barbed wire. Brianna, I am not missing this interview, I said, each word deliberate. Absolutely not. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs and glanced back over her shoulder. That smirk, cold, sharp, practiced, curled across her mouth. I'll tell Dad. My stomach dropped. Because in our house, Brianna didn't need weapons. She had our father. 2 minutes later, he stormed into the kitchen like he'd been summoned up from the depths of hell. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate, the kind that told you he'd already decided you were guilty before hearing a word you had to say. What's this garbage I'm hearing? He barked. You're refusing to take your sister where she needs to go? I stood by the counter, fingers pressed into the edge to keep my hands from shaking. I have my interview today, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. Vertex Digital. This is the first real shot I've gotten in months. He laughed. It wasn't amused. It was the kind of laugh that strips flesh off bone. Cruel, mocking, designed to make you feel stupid for even opening your mouth. Your sister actually has a real future, Lorraine, he said. She needs to maintain her social connections. Those girls she's meeting? Their parents own businesses. They have money, influence, networks that matter. Ashley's father runs a private equity firm. Kennedy's mother sits on Northwestern's board. These relationships are investments. Each word landed like a verdict. You are not an investment. My chest tightened, like someone was wrapping wire around my ribs. So my life doesn't matter? I asked, voice shaking now, despite my best efforts. My goals, my opportunities, none of that counts for anything? His face darkened. He took 2 heavy steps forward until he was inches from my face. I could smell the bitter coffee on his breath. Her future matters, he said, voice dropping low and vicious. Yours never did. He didn't shout the last part. That almost made it worse. It sounded like a conclusion he'd come to long ago, now spoken out loud because he'd finally stopped pretending. Before I could even process it, before I could step back or build any kind of defense, he shoved me. Hard. My back slammed into the hallway wall with such force that air burst out of my lungs. My shoulder crashed into the picture frame hanging behind me. A smiling family photo from some long ago Christmas where we'd all been pretending. The glass shattered. It tinkled onto the hardwood floor like tiny, glittering pieces of the lie we'd lived. My knees buckled. I slid halfway down the wall before catching myself, pain burning across my back and shoulder. Brianna leaned against the counter, chewing her gum, scrolling on her phone, watching, not intervening. Like this was cheap entertainment on a Tuesday morning. Mom walked in from the laundry room a moment later. She didn't gasp. She didn't rush to help me off the floor. Her eyes barely flicked over the broken glass. "Why do you always have to cause trouble?" she muttered, shaking her head, the disappointment already loaded and ready. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just pressed my palm against the wall and forced myself upright, my shoulders screaming. Dad stood over me, his shadow blotting out the morning light from the kitchen window. "You will take her," he said. "That interview means nothing. Nobody important wants you anyway." Something inside me didn't explode. It snapped, quietly, like a small fuse burning out, shutting off power to a part of the house that had always been dimly lit to begin with. He wasn't just choosing Brianna again. He was announcing, in front of everyone, that my life was worthless. I straightened my blazer with shaking fingers. "I'm leaving," I said, "right now, for my interview." "Try it," he snarled. "Walk out that door and you'll regret it." Brianna smirked. Mom crossed her arms, already writing the narrative where I was the villain who forced them to be cruel. I picked up my car keys from the counter and walked toward the front door. He moved to block it. For a second, standing there with his body filling the doorway, I felt exactly what they wanted me to feel. Caged. Owned. Small enough to crush. I looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm going to this interview whether you approve or not," I said. Then I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't call him. I called someone else. Someone who'd been telling me for years that I deserved better than this. "Harper," I said when she answered, my voice shaking but determined. "I need help." His hand shot out, fingers clamping around my wrist. I twisted, harder than I knew I could, and his grip slipped. Before he could grab me again, I yanked the door open and stepped outside. The September air slapped my face, cold, sharp, free. I walked down the driveway while he yelled behind me, his voice rising in pitch the farther away I got, like a man who couldn't believe his control wasn't working anymore. Harper Bennett, my old college roommate from DePaul University and now an HR staffer at Vertex, pulled up in her silver Honda CR-V 14 minutes later. She rolled down the window and looked at me, really looked, at the bruise already blooming on my shoulder, at the way I was holding myself together by raw will. "What did they do this time?" she asked quietly as I climbed in. "They tried to make me cancel my interview to take Brianna to the mall," I said. "When I refused, he shoved me into the wall and told me my future never mattered." I pulled my blazer aside just enough for her to see the fingerprint-shaped bruise spreading across my skin. Harper didn't gasp. Her eyes went cold and focused. "I'm going to help you get this job, Lorraine," she said, "and then you are never going back there again. Do you understand me?" On the drive downtown, she fixed my collar, handed me a bottle of water, made me drink half. She peppered me with mock interview questions until my voice stopped trembling. "You earned this," she repeated. "They don't get to stop you today, not this time." Vertex Digital's office was in a sleek glass tower on Walker Drive, steel, white marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. Exactly the kind of place my parents insisted I'd never belong. The interview lasted 49 minutes. 3 panel members. Technical questions, behavioral scenarios, portfolio review. And I crushed it. For the first time in my life, as I walked out of that conference room, I actually believed I might belong somewhere. Back in Harper's car, my phone lit up with notifications. 12 texts from Brianna, each one more vicious than the last. "You just cost me everything. Ashley and Kennedy left without me because you were selfish. You're so dead when you come home. I hope that job spits you out like the trash you are." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed one sentence. "I'm not coming home." And for the first time in 24 years, I meant it. Harper took me back to her apartment in Lakeview and all but ordered me to stay the night. Later, standing in her bathroom, I peeled off my blazer and stared at my shoulder in the mirror. The bruise was fully formed now, dark purple, almost the exact shape of his hand. It looked like a brand, like proof of ownership. But for the first time, I didn't see it as a mark that I belonged to them. I saw it as evidence. The last visible reminder of the day I decided I wouldn't be their property anymore. I slept like people do after a car accident. Not peacefully, just from sheer exhaustion. Every time I drifted toward consciousness, I felt the phantom slam of my back hitting that wall, the sting in my shoulder, the echo of his voice. Your future never mattered. By the time I finally woke up for real, Harper's apartment was quiet. Gray Chicago light leaked around the edges of the curtains. For half a second, I didn't remember where I was. No hallway, no shouting, no Brianna lurking with her phone. Just a small, messy living room, a sofa bed, and the faint smell of coffee. I got up slowly, every muscle tight, and padded into the kitchen. Harper stood at the counter in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, cradling a mug of coffee and staring at her laptop like it had personally offended her. "Morning," I croaked. She looked up. Her eyes flicked to my shoulder, to the faint edge of the bruise peeking from under my t-shirt. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I tried to shrug and immediately regretted it. Pain shot down my arm. "Like I got hit by a bus," I said. But the bus had my dad's face. Her mouth tightened, not with pity, with anger. "Sit down," she said softly. "There's something I need to show you." There it was, the way she said it. My stomach curled in on itself. I sat at her small kitchen table, fingers picking at a chip in the laminate while she turned the laptop toward me. My own name stared back at me in bold letters, nestled in the subject lines of internal emails I was never meant to read. The first one was from Curtis Williams, the hiring director who'd interviewed me yesterday. "Lorraine Lancaster, follow-up call tomorrow." My heart stuttered. "He wanted to call me back?" I asked. Harper nodded. "Yeah, he CC'd recruiting. Said you impressed the panel. That part's good." Her voice shifted on the last word, went quieter. The good news was just the top layer. I could feel the bad news underneath like ice. "Scroll down," she said. I did. The next email was marked confidential, internal use only, sent from one recruiter to another. My eyes skimmed the lines at first, then locked in and refused to move on. "Her father called the office this afternoon. Said she's mentally unstable and dangerous to hire. Claims she attacked him this morning before the interview. Suggested she has violent tendencies and could pose a liability risk. Strongly recommended we remove her from consideration." The words blurred, not because I misunderstood them, because they made too much, horrifying, perfect sense. My father hadn't just shoved me into a wall and told me my future never mattered. He'd picked up the phone and tried to erase it. I pushed the chair back a few inches, needing space that didn't exist in this tiny kitchen. My breathing went shallow, that familiar panic clawing up my throat. "Harper," I whispered, "please tell me this is some sick joke." "It's not," she said. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was clenched. The recruiter forwarded the note to compliance because the call felt off, inappropriate. That's the only reason I even saw it. Otherwise, it would have just quietly poisoned your file. "Poisoned," I repeated, the word sticking in my mouth like something bitter. "He told them I attacked him? That I'm unstable?" I thought of all the years he'd told me I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. I'd spent half my childhood apologizing for feelings he'd jammed into me like shrapnel. And now he was using those same invented flaws as bullets. Harper slid into the chair across from me, folding her hands around her coffee mug like she needed something warm to hold on to. "Lorraine," she said, "I need you to hear me clearly. This isn't just overprotective parent territory. What he did crosses a line." I laughed, a small, sharp, humorless sound. "Of course it does," I said, "but he's always crossed lines. That's his favorite hobby." "Not like this," she insisted. "You don't understand how this looks on our side. He called the main HR line. He identified himself. He tried to influence a hiring decision by making false claims about you and hinting at liability. That's not just gross, it's potentially an ethics problem. For him, for his employer, for anyone tied to those calls." The word ethics did not belong to my father. It sounded wrong next to his name, like putting pearls on barbed wire. I stared at the email again, my own name sitting there like an accusation. "But it worked, didn't it?" I said quietly. "They're going to think twice about hiring someone whose own father says she's dangerous." "Not if we don't let it end here," Harper said. I looked up. There was something blazing behind her calm HR expression now, something I recognized. It was the same fire that had carried me out of that house yesterday. "I need you to be honest," I said. "If I hadn't stayed here last night, if you hadn't seen this, would I have ever known, or would they have just stopped calling?" She hesitated. That was my answer. "Usually," she said carefully, "you wouldn't have known. You'd just think you didn't get the job. But the recruiter flagged it because he was uncomfortable, and because this isn't normal, not even in corporate. So what now? I whispered. He wins again? He gets to physically hurt me in the morning and then make sure no one will ever hire me by afternoon. I move out. He still controls whether I can build a career? That's the plan? That's his plan, Harper said, not ours. Silence settled between us. Not soft, not comforting. Heavy, like the pause before a verdict. Then she leaned forward. If you walk away from this, she said, he's going to do it again. Maybe not at Vertex, maybe at the next company, or the one after that. He's tasted that power now. He knows he can pick up a phone and try to detonate your chances before you even step in the door. Her words curled around the fear in my chest and squeezed. I imagined it. Every interview I ever got from this point on, always one step behind his voice, his narrative of me as unstable, dangerous, a liability. Every hiring manager receiving some self-righteous call from Gerald Hartwell, concerned father and respected consultant, poisoning my name before I even had one. I swallowed hard. So what are you saying? I asked. I sue him? I sue Vertex? I'm a broke 24-year-old who just slept on your sofa. I can't afford a heroic legal battle. I'm not saying sue anyone, Harper replied. Not yet. I'm saying we use the system he tried to exploit. We document everything. We file formal complaints with the right departments. We make sure there's a record that you are the one being targeted. We turn his own arrogance into evidence. Evidence. The word made me think of the bruise on my shoulder, the shattered glass on the kitchen floor, the voicemail in his slurred voice I'd heard my entire childhood, just not recorded. Something cold slid into place inside me, locking onto the rage that had been simmering for years. I don't even know where to start, I admitted. That's okay, Harper said. I do. This is literally my job. She opened a fresh document on her laptop. The blank screen glared at us. We're going to build a timeline, she said. Start with yesterday morning. What time did he push you? I told her. She typed. Click-clack, each keystroke another nail in the coffin of the version of events he'd tried to sell. We logged everything. Approximate times. What he said, when I left the house, when I arrived at Vertex, when Brianna's text came in, when the call from my father hit their system. The more we wrote, the less it felt like therapy, and the more it felt like strategy. At some point, my hands stopped shaking. You realize what you're doing, right? Harper said quietly after a while. Writing a very depressing diary entry, I tried. She shook her head. You're drawing a line, she said. Not the kind he's always drawn. Between valuable and useless, between Brianna and you. This is a legal and ethical line. He crossed it. We're just turning on the light so everyone can see it. I leaned back in the chair, feeling the wood dig into my spine. A tiny part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut, pretend I'd never seen any of this, call Curtis and say, I'm sorry for the drama, I'll just disappear. That was the part of me my parents had built, carefully and consistently, out of guilt and fear. But the other part, the part that had walked past my father in the doorway yesterday, was louder now. What if this ruins him? I asked quietly. What if he loses his job, his contracts, everything? What if this blows up his life? Harper held my gaze. Lorraine, she said, he tried to blow up yours, on purpose, repeatedly. You are not responsible for the consequences of his choices. He is. I exhaled, long and shaky. When you say it like that, I murmured, it sounds so simple. It's not simple, she admitted. It's just true. She turned the laptop back toward herself and started formatting the document into something cleaner, more official. We'll finish building the record today, she said. Tomorrow we turn it into a formal complaint, to Vertex Compliance, and to his firm. We do this professionally, no emotional language, just facts, dates, recordings, screenshots. Let them be the ones who feel sick reading it. I watched her work, precise, methodical, calm. The opposite of the chaos I'd come from. You know this could change everything, right? She added softly, without looking up. Not just for this job. For how much control he has over you, maybe for the rest of your life. I thought about the broken picture frame, glass shards glittering on hardwood, the perfect family portrait destroyed, not by accident, but as collateral damage in yet another reminder that I didn't matter. I thought about the bruise on my shoulder, shaped exactly like his hand. I'm done letting him own my future, I said. Harper finally looked up and smiled, a small, fierce thing. Good, she said. Then let's make sure this is the last time he ever gets to dial a number and decide what you're worth. We sat there at her tiny kitchen table, two women in sweatshirts and messy hair, surrounded by coffee mugs and open tabs and the low hum of the fridge. It didn't look dramatic from the outside, but I knew in the quiet center of my chest that this was the moment everything truly shifted. I wasn't just surviving my family anymore. I was preparing to fight back. Not with screaming matches they'd twist and rewrite. Not with tearful confrontations they'd dismiss. With something they'd never expected me to have. A plan. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight warming my face and a sense that something fundamental inside me had shifted overnight. Not healed, just calibrated. Like my body finally understood the difference between fear and foresight. Harper was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by printed papers, highlighters, and a level of organization I could only dream of maintaining in my own life. When she looked up at me, her expression was steady, serious, focused. "Lorraine," she said, "before we do anything else, I need you to see what came in overnight." My pulse jumped. What came in? She reached for a folder, thick, heavier than anything I expected, and handed it to me. "Everything," she said. I opened the folder. Then the world went still. Inside was a stack of documents, emails, call logs, recruiter notes, screenshots, internal memos, a transcription. And on top, printed in bold, was the subject line that made my stomach plummet. Voicemail, received from Gerald Hartwell. Forward to compliance. I looked up sharply. "He called again?" I asked. Harper nodded. "Last night, 9:40 p.m. The night shift recruiter recorded it. Standard procedure for all external communications outside business hours. My hands shook as I reached for the printed transcript. Then I saw the words. "This is Gerald Hartwell. I need to speak with someone in charge. I want to make sure you understand that hiring my daughter is a mistake. She's unpredictable. She attacked me this morning before running out of the house. I'm concerned for your workplace safety if you put her around other employees. By the way, I'm on the Greater Chicago Chamber of Commerce Advisory Board. Caldwell & Associates values our corporate relationships. It would be unfortunate if this incident affected future business between us." My chest locked, like someone had taken cold hands and squeezed my lungs. "He used his Chamber of Commerce title," I whispered. "He used Caldwell to threaten them." "He did," Harper said, "and that's where he screwed himself." But I couldn't celebrate, not yet. I felt sick, humiliated, betrayed in a way I didn't have words for. "That wasn't enough for him," I said, shaking my head. "Hurting me wasn't enough. He had to salt the earth behind me." Harper slid into the chair next to me, her presence grounding. "Lorraine, this isn't just a bad parent situation. This is workplace harassment, interference with employment, using his position to influence another company's hiring process. Companies take that seriously, especially when there are recorded calls." I stared down at the papers. There were timestamps of every call he made. There were the internal notes. Caller appeared agitated, concerned about risks, mentions being a chamber advisor, implied consequences for non-compliance, forward to compliance for review. There were the screenshots of Brianna's texts. "You ruined my day. You're dead when you get home. You think anyone wants you?" Seeing them printed in black and white made them feel like evidence in a courtroom. Because that's what they were now. Evidence. Not drama, not family misunderstandings, not another incident swept under the rug with Mom's favorite line, "Don't exaggerate." This was documented. Irrefutable. Harper took the folder back gently. "We're writing the formal complaint now," she said. "I've already drafted most of it." She turned her laptop toward me. At the top, in sharp clinical wording. "Formal complaint. Unlawful interference in hiring process. Regarding Gerald Hartwell." Her typing was clean, neutral, no emotional language. And then bullet points. "That's amazing." On September 10, at approximately 9:40 p.m., Mr. Hartwell made a second call to Vertex HR, misrepresented the candidate's mental stability, asserted false claims of violence, invoked his professional affiliations to influence hiring decisions. Actions constitute potential ethical violations under Caldwell & Associates policy. She scrolled. Further down was the timeline. Every minute of the previous day documented. What was said, when, how, by whom. Then came the attachments section. Voicemail transcript, call logs, 3 total. Internal recruiter notes. Brianna's threatening messages. Photograph of physical injury, optional. My throat tightened. "You included the option for the bruise?" I asked. "Yes, but it's your choice. You don't have to submit it." I swallowed hard. He left a mark, I said quietly. Physical, verbal, professional. The least I can do is leave a paper trail. Harper nodded once. I'll attach it. She kept typing, fast but precise, like she'd been preparing for this moment longer than I had. We'll send this through Vertex's corporate compliance, she explained. Once it's filed, they're legally obligated to investigate. His employer will receive a professional notification. And then what? And then consequences begin, she said, real ones. But that wasn't the part that shook me the most. It was the next thing she told me. Lorraine, companies don't take kindly to outside threats, especially not threats tied to contracts, networking, or influence. Your father just exposed himself to something huge. She tapped the transcript. This alone is enough to launch an ethics review at Caldwell, and possibly at the chamber. The room tilted slightly. He could lose everything. Yes, Harper said calmly, because he tried to take everything from you. I sat back, let the words sink into the space between us. For 24 years, my father had controlled every narrative in our household. He had shaped how people saw me, even how I saw myself. Lazy, ungrateful, unworthy. Not as important as Brianna, not as polished, not as special, not enough. There had never been evidence, just his word, his voice, his authority. But now there was evidence. I rubbed my thumb over the corner of the voicemail transcript, the paper soft from Harper handling it so much. So we send this, I said slowly. Then what? We wait? We wait, Harper confirmed. And while we wait, we prepare. Prepare for what? For them to realize they've lost control of you. She stood and walked to the kitchen counter, picking up her phone and scrolling. I've already drafted the formal notice to Caldwell's HR, she said. All it does is inform them that an employee used their professional title to interfere with an external hiring process. They'll take it from there. I blinked. You already drafted it? Lorraine, Harper said, eyes flashing. Your father weaponized his status. He thought that made him untouchable. But corporate systems don't care about ego. They care about liability, optics, compliance, documentation. She paused. And you have all three. Something cold, sharp, and electric slid through me like metal heating in a forge. A new feeling, one I had never associated with myself. Power. Not the loud kind, not the violent kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from truth, recorded and undeniable. The kind that comes from realizing that sometimes the system works, if you use it correctly. Harper closed the folder and placed it in front of me again. This time, not as evidence. As a weapon. This, she said, tapping the cover, is how we stop them. Not with shouting. Not with emotional pleas. Not with another fight in that kitchen. Her voice lowered. This is how we make sure they never get to sabotage your future again. I exhaled, long and trembling. Let's do it, I said. Harper smiled a slow, fierce smile. We already are. Together, we drafted the final wording. Clear, professional, devastating in its precision. Then Harper hovered her cursor over the email button. You ready? She asked. I thought of the bruise on my shoulder, the broken glass on the floor, the words my father had spit at me, the voicemail he'd left about me, the fear I'd lived with for years. And the train ticket I desperately hoped I'd earn. Send it, I said. She clicked. And in that moment, in a small kitchen in Lakeview, with 2 mugs of cold coffee and a stack of evidence between us, I realized something. My father had always controlled me because I played by his rules. Today, for the first time in my life, I rewrote them. For the first 2 days after we sent the complaint, nothing happened. No emails, no calls, no updates from Vertex. Silence. Thick, waiting room silence, wrapped around everything like fog. But I wasn't the same girl who used to panic in the quiet. This time, the silence didn't feel like their control. It felt like the air right before a storm breaks. Harper kept reminding me, investigations take time, be patient. Patience wasn't exactly my strongest skill, but planning was. So we planned. We rehearsed what I'd say if Curtis called. We organized files. We documented everything from beginning to end with timestamps and supporting messages. And on the 3rd morning, as I was sipping coffee in Harper's sweats with my hair in a messy bun, my phone buzzed. Curtis Williams, Vertex Digital incoming call. My heart slammed against my ribs. Answer, Harper whispered. I did. Hello? Lorraine, this is Curtis Williams. His voice was warm, direct, and noticeably more careful than when he'd interviewed me. Yes, hi, thank you for calling, I said, steadying my breath. I'd like to meet with you, he said, in person, preferably today, if possible. There are some matters I want to discuss face-to-face. My pulse jumped. Of course, I replied. I'm available. Good, he said. Let's meet at the Riverfront Cafe on Wacker at 2 p.m. I'll take care of the tab. He hung up. Harper raised an eyebrow. That sounds good. It sounds something, I said. I didn't know what to expect. Reassurance, apology, or a polite, sorry, we can't proceed. But when I walked into Riverfront Cafe at 1:59 p.m., Curtis was already there, seated near the window overlooking the river, a folder beside his coffee. He stood when he saw me. Lorraine, he said, thank you for meeting me. He gestured for me to sit. I did. Then he took a long breath, folded his hands, and said something no one in my family had ever said to me. I owe you an apology. My throat tightened. What your father did, he continued, was completely inappropriate, unethical, in violation of every professional boundary that exists. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with that, especially during such an important moment in your career. I stared at him, not because I didn't understand the words, because I didn't recognize what it felt like to be respected. He slid the folder toward me. This is the internal review, he said. Compliance took your complaint seriously, very seriously, and due to the nature of the calls and the threats he made, we have paused all external liaison work with Caldwell and Associates pending further investigation. Paused. Those words hit harder than a slap. Not to me, to him. My father. Then Curtis added, and Lorenzo, our VP of Compliance, has forwarded a formal inquiry to the Greater Chicago Chamber of Commerce. They've acknowledged receipt. I blinked. The chamber? I repeated. Curtis nodded. Your father used their name in a coercive context. That alone is grounds for review. My chest tightened again, this time not with fear, but with something darker, something colder. I understand this is complicated, Curtis said. Family dynamics can be difficult, but I want to make something clear. He leaned in slightly. We do not hold you responsible for his behavior. My eyes stung. I looked down. And there's one more thing, he said. I looked up. We'd like to offer you the position. Everything stopped. The hum of the cafe, the river outside, the clatter of spoons against cups. My heart beat. We were going to call you back even before all this happened, he continued. You impressed the entire panel. You earned this. Not out of pity, not because of the situation, because of your talent and your performance. A breath escaped me. Half laugh, half disbelief. Curtis slid a printed offer letter across the table. Junior Project Coordinator, he said. $58,000 annually. Benefits. Full training track. And... He paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. There's an additional option for relocation to our Austin, Texas office if you're interested in a fresh start. A fresh start. Far from Chicago. Far from that house. Far from his reach. I swallowed. I don't know what to say, I murmured. Say yes, Curtis said gently, because you deserve yeses after too many years of the opposite. I signed. He shook my hand. And when I walked out of that cafe into the sharp sunlit air, the world felt bigger than I'd ever let myself imagine. 2 weeks later, everything began collapsing in the house I used to call home. A thin envelope arrived at Harper's apartment, addressed to me, with formal letterhead from Caldwell and Associates Legal Department. Inside, due to repeated ethical concerns and violation of professional conduct standards, we are unable to continue Mr. Gerald Hartwell's advisory contract effective immediately. My father's career, his pride, his identity, his social currency, was gone. The same afternoon, I received frantic calls from home. I let the phone ring until Harper gave me the look. You need to hear what they say. I answered on the fourth ring. Lorraine? Mom's voice shook. Your father, he lost his consultancy. We're behind on the mortgage. We need your help. You have to understand. You're still family. You can't just ignore us when we... I cut her off. No, I said softly. You don't mean that, she insisted. We raised you. No, I repeated, louder this time. You controlled me. You diminished me. You let him hurt me and told me to apologize for bleeding. She inhaled sharply. Lorraine, you don't get to set my life on fire, I said, and then ask me to save you from the smoke. She fell silent, so I hung up, and I didn't pick up again. I moved into my own small studio in Pilsen 2 weeks later. It was barely 500 square feet. The walls thin enough to hear my neighbor's music, but it was mine. My bruises had faded to yellow, almost gone. But my clarity? Sharper than ever. My father left 3 voicemails in the days that followed. Not enraged, not booming, not commanding. Desperate, small, asking how this happened, demanding answers, insisting he'd been misunderstood. I listened into 15 seconds of the first one, 3 of the second, and none of the third. The power I felt wasn't triumph, it wasn't revenge. It was something cleaner. Boundaries. Consequences. Truth with receipts. The official welcome email from Vertex came on a Tuesday morning at 9:12 a.m. We are thrilled to have you join the team. Austin relocation package attached. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't call Brianna or my parents or anyone from the life I was leaving behind. I simply closed my laptop, breathed in, and felt something tiny and fierce spark inside me. Then I opened a new browser tab and bought a one-way train ticket to Austin, Texas. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't owe them the courtesy. I just packed the few belongings that mattered into 2 suitcases and a duffel bag. Harper hugged me in her doorway at 6 a.m., arms wrapped tight around me like she was trying to keep the moment still. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," I corrected. Her eyes glistened. "Go," she said. "Build the life you deserve, and don't you dare look back." The train ride south cut a clean line across the map. Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas. 24 hours of motion, sky, silence, and music in my headphones. For the first time since childhood, I slept deeply. No footsteps outside my door, no slammed cabinets, no accusations waiting at breakfast. Just the hum of the train and an entire life ahead that no one else owned. By the time we reached Austin, the sun was rising. Warm, golden, nothing like Chicago's cold light. I stepped onto the platform, inhaled, and my phone buzzed. One last message. From my mother. "Please, we're your family. You can't abandon us like this." I stared at it. Then typed, "You abandoned me every single day of my life. I'm finally returning the favor." I hit send, then blocked the number. All of them. Every single one. I rented a small apartment, started my first day at Vertex, walked into a workplace where people looked at me with respect instead of resentment, where my ideas mattered, where my voice wasn't a threat, it was an asset. And every morning since then, when I make my coffee and watch sunlight filter through my own windows, I remember 3 things. I am not disposable. I am not theirs. I am finally mine. They thought they owned me. I proved I owned myself.